Welcome everybody back for another edition of Warm Weather Fans, the Sunbelt podcast. My name is Brian Stone, your host here as always, joined again by Zeke Palermo. Zeke, both of our teams pooped the bed this past weekend. We've got a lot of interesting things to talk about. But yeah, it was not a good watching weekend for us, starting with you on Thursday and ending with me on Saturday night. But other than whatever you want to call what Georgia State is at this point, how's it going?
It's good, man. It's good. Enjoyed the weekend and just, things are really starting to crank up here in the conference, not for our teams, but we're really starting to hit the home stretch. And we got some results that keep things interesting throughout the conference. So I'm excited to get to talk to them.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and start with Thursday. Georgia State gets outdueled by South Alabama 38-31. I knew Georgia State's defense was bad coming into this one. I did not think that they would make the South Alabama offense look like the 99 Rams.
Yeah.
Bishop Davenport is throwing darts all over the yard. You've got Kentrell Bullock with 113 yards and 2 scores. What can you say at this point about Georgia State? I mean, I'm still shocked. It's Sunday. I haven't heard anything close to Dell McGee has been fired. So
if it hasn't happened by now, you have to imagine that it's kind of like with the quarterback thing. Maybe they'll surprise us, but we were saying all year, what are you waiting for before deciding on a quarterback? What were you waiting to see?
Right.
So it feels like we're in a similar holding pattern with the coaching position. Is like you've seen all you're going to see through this, at least through this season. So are you giving him the respect of not doing it mid-season? I really don't know what's going on. Maybe they want him another year. Maybe this is just not. Maybe we're just blowing smoke, right? But it doesn't look good. I didn't think points were going to get scored in this game. In battles of bad offenses versus bad defenses, I always tend towards the bad defenses because defense can happen by accident. Offense really can't to the same degree. So I was very surprised that we got some level of duel. And in the fourth quarter became very exciting. 24 points total in the quarter. Georgia State put up 14. South Alabama put up 10. It was an interesting game late, although South Alabama kind of ran away with it. Georgia State was up by 3 with about 9.5 minutes left. Tie game with 5.5 minutes left, and then Kentrell Bullock runs for a 4-yard score late in the game with like maybe 3 minutes left to kind of put it on ice. You say put it on ice. Usually it's not that situation, but when you've got Cameron Brown throwing an interception within 4 plays of his next drive, mind you, Georgia State had just fumbled on a Rashad Amos handoff. So that was the situation. I was very shocked that either offense came to play. From a Georgia State perspective, it's like, hey, man, where's Cameron Brown been all year? Why did we have to play this Christian Valaire game in the early season? Why did we then have to do this half and half with TJ Finley? Because the guy's playing really good, 19 for 33 in this one, 241 yards. He had the late interception, which really hurts, but 4 touchdowns otherwise. Also ran 10 times for 67 yards along with 15. So he's been balling. And if he sticks with Georgia State, I don't know how likely that is. But if he sticks, we're quarterback set, right? And that's a position that this team is, I guess it hasn't been that long, but hasn't been in since Darren Granger. And so that's a good point. South Alabama, you finally see something good out of Bishop Davenport. We've been waiting for that Kentrell Bullock big game. We finally get that out of him. But I don't want to read too far into that because these are the 2 worst teams in the conference. No,
they are.
Yeah. So someone's got to win the football game.
Yeah.
Again, I feel a very similar way to how you have felt I'm catching up to you because you felt general apathy towards Georgia Southern for most of the season and kind of starting last season, kind of throughout the Helton era. As long as I've known you, really, you've had a general apathy towards
it kind of hit a peak for me. Other than this season, 2023 was like having an animal locked in the zoo and its eyes just glaze over. Like I was just like I hit like a blue screen of death in 2023 watching Davis Brin throw 9,000 interceptions. At the very least, I know this is a low bar. At the very least, Georgia State has a fun, interesting quarterback to watch every week. The defense is awful, but they have talent where you can watch Cameron Brown throw to Ted Hurst and you're like, well, that was fun. You would have liked to have won, but we kind of have the skeleton of a good offense. Whereas, like I said, the 2023 Southern team, I was just like, can we get this team off the TV? Like this was, it was embarrassing. So I do want to give credit. Bishop Davenport, 16 of 22, 280, 2 touchdowns, no picks, the highest PFF passing grade in the conference this week at 89.5. Cameron Brown, the 4th highest passing grade in the Sun Belt this week. You read off his stats. I think when we talk about Georgia State, I was thinking about this as this game was wrapping up. And kind of what you said with Cameron Brown early in the season and the Valaire thing and the TJ Finley stuff. I think this season for Georgia State, an important thing would have been perception. If they had come into the season and said, we've got this young guy, Cameron Brown, starting game 1 or whenever he was available to start. I don't know if he was like injured or whatever to start the season. If they had come out and said, hey, this is a building year for us. We want to identify a quarterback. We want to put Cameron out there, give him ample runway to kind of find his way as a quarterback at the FBS level. I think if you had come out kind of with that PR a little bit, I think there would be more leeway for Dell McGee. But when you roll Valaire out there, who was a starter last season, and he doesn't look good, and then you bring TJ Finley over from, what was he at, Western Kentucky last, after Texas State. You get that, and then you're shuffling between these two quarterbacks. It looks perception-wise like, and I could be right on this, could be wrong on this, you don't know how to identify a quarterback. You don't know who the best guy in the room is. It's the inverse, like I said, of Charles Huff, where Huff last season turned around at some point and went, Stone Earl's just not it. Like, we're just going to have to roll with Braylon Braxton, and let the chips kind of fall where they may. If McGee had done this to start, I think it would have bought him probably a lot more goodwill, both from a perception perspective, but probably with the fan base as well. Because I know for me, if I don't want Helton to be my coach, but if we came out next year and said, we've got a brand new quarterback starting day 1. He's young. We're going to let him play the whole season and kind of find his feet. I think that would have bought him more goodwill than being like, I don't know, let's just kind of throw these guys up in the air and hopefully one emerges. But even when Brown plays well, I'm going to deny it for a while and force Finley out there.
I think you bring an interesting point about talent identification, and I don't know if this is a Dell McGee problem. I don't know if this is a Hugh Jackson problem, because Lord knows he had issues with that during his tenure with the Cleveland Browns. But another kind of angle to this, or to further that thought, is a guy that I had really only heard in passing ahead of this game, Jordan Simmons. He transferred in this year from Akron and came there by way of Michigan State, I believe. Leads the team in rushing in this game, 11 carries for 78, long of 15. I love that number. So he's, running very well, 10 for 63. Excellent. This is a guy that last year at Akron ran for over 600 yards on 6 yards a carry. He's got like 40 carries all year. 24. I'm sorry, not even. 24 carries all year.
Yeah.
Again, this is a South Alabama defense. This isn't like James Madison that we saw several weeks ago. Heck, this team has even played Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, who are now very highly ranked teams. But where was this guy? Why wasn't he getting snaps? Why wasn't he getting touches? It would appear that this guy, I mean, at Akron, roughly comparable situation, roughly comparable conference, right? As compared to maybe FCS or JUCO or even P4. Where was he? Why wasn't he taking snaps? And why is it when he finally gets the opportunity to take carries that he's doing something? He also gets 3 catches in this game for 11 yards, but 3 catches. I feel
I brought this up, but like
malpractice.
it's the Nick Chubb thing. And I don't know. I'm right there with you. I don't know if it's Hugh Jackson or whatever, but this is played out with the Cleveland Browns before with Nick Chubb as a rookie, where it was he was behind an inefficient running back, and the GM, which you don't have at the college level, so they can't turn around and trade whoever the starter was before him and force the hand of the offensive coordinator, head coach. You can't do that. But yeah, they've had issues. I mean, I know at least Hugh Jackson has had serious issues with identifying like who the best player is among a group. So I wouldn't be shocked if this kind of fell at his feet.
We'll see. I mean, I think because of the nature in which he was brought in, the kind of again, we don't know if the guy stepped down or asked to step down from the offensive coordinator situation. I don't know if the long-term plan was to get Hugh Jackson in here. I'm not certain if this is a clean house situation at the end of the season. Again, because we've seen and heard, also more importantly, heard nothing from administration. I have no idea if this is a Hugh Jackson problem. It doesn't matter because as of right now, he and Dell McGee are a twin package.
Kentrell Bullock in this one, 20 carries, 113, 2 touchdowns, second highest PFF rushing grade of the week. Ted Hurst, 5 catches on 11 targets, 110, 2 touchdowns, second highest receiving PFF grade of the week. This was just an offensive explosion, but on the flip side, it also shows why both of these teams are kind of in the basement because they don't play a lick of defense. And, Georgia State's got a good, not great offense, I would say. I mean, you could correct me and say it was slightly above average. I don't really know where you fall on that scale, but to give up 31 on South Alabama's end and on Georgia State's end give up 38. I mean, this is why the teams are in the hole that they're in. It's not in theory for lack of like offense. They just neither one of them play a lick of defense really.
Yeah, I would say that defense has been the greater issue at Georgia State, but let's not pretend like if you rolled James Madison's defense, this is a 10-win Georgia State team.
No,
not even close. So that is the key. Whereas on South Alabama's side, they equally play defense fairly poorly, but Bishop Davenport's been really disappointing. Kentrell Bullock never took that step. Voisin, I mean, part of that's quarterback play, but Voisin hasn't been the guy that we kind of anticipated he would be. So 2 bad teams in both phases.
Yep.
Someone had to win.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to the Saturday games. Old Dominion beats App State 24-21. This was a weird game because I didn't think, despite the stats, like Old Dominion played all that well, really. I kind of expected them to whoop App. And when you put on top of it how poorly JJ Cole played until they eventually pulled him for AJ Swan, who actually looked like fairly good as a quarterback against Old Dominion. And it wasn't like a game where, Old Dominion was just up by so many points and App just kind of scored in garbage time. I mean, again, App scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. His finish is a 3-point margin of victory. It wasn't exactly like, oh, it's 45-10 and they scored 2 touchdowns in garbage time and that was nice and, whatever. This was still fairly competitive. I know App was App was down, what was it, 24-7 entering the fourth quarter, and Old Dominion, I guess, just kind of took their foot off the gas. But it's like, I don't know. This game, I don't want to say this is a sign of things to come for ODU, but this is not a great rebound performance coming off of 2 basically ass whippings,
Yeah.
Of the previous 2 games, like I think this is a reason for concern, because this opens up the possibility of kind of what we said last week, which is like there's probably another loss on the schedule coming for Old Dominion at some point.
I mean, this is the example of who's around Colton Joseph to support him even when, again, he had a great game, 21 for 33 through the air, 305 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. His only interception came on like the 6-yard line. It was in the end zone. So that wasn't like a super costly turnover. Obviously made the game closer than it needed to be, but that interception late came at the end of like a 5-minute drive. So, but then he leads the team in rushing. Who around him is creating plays so that you can milk this clock out, right? No one. The eyes go straight to him, and that is so frustrating. AJ Swan, as you mentioned, best we've seen him play since like Lindenwood, because that Southern Miss game was ugly.
Before that, I would say Charlotte.
Like Charlotte. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if I guess we'll find out this week if this is like a second half turnaround from him, or if JJ Cole sticks with it. But yeah, Old Dominion, this is what we saw, and we forgave them because they whooped up on Coastal. But this was the same problem that we had with them in the early weeks, is you have this offense that is supposed to be your bread and butter. This is a good defense too. It's not exceptional, but it's going to win you games. It's good enough to win games. But if your offense is a calling card, looking at Ricky Ronnie, how are you doing this? How are you putting up 24? How are you going scoreless in the fourth quarter, even when you're up that much? Because when you let the gas off, because of your 2 third-quarter touchdowns, look at that, 2 touchdowns, and App is a field goal away from winning this game, or from tying the game. And so it's exacerbating these ideas that we've had all year of like Old Dominion can't step on the neck. And that's what separates them from – that is the biggest gulf between them and James Madison, is the ability to step on necks.
And you talked about letting off the gas late. To use another car analogy, it was almost like driving a stick and it's like stalling out. I mean, look at the score at halftime was 10-7. Old Dominion scored the majority of their points in the third quarter, and then, like you said, just kind of meh. Like I went through and looked, you were asking about who else other than Colton Joseph. So I want to use like PFF kind of as a sounding board for that. So I sorted it by receivers that had a minimum of 5 targets. Keep in mind, Colton Joseph threw 33 passes. He had 2 receivers with more than 5 targets on Saturday. You had Naeem Abdul-Rahim Gladding, who was basically the only main beneficiary, 8 carries. He had 17 targets on Saturday. Gladding had 8 catches for 105 and a score. And then you had Ja'Cory Thomas, who had 6 catches, 69 yards and a score. Again, it's just not like, I know ODU fans are probably like, oh, problem solved. Like, we have no issues anymore. Like, we got through our 2 rough game patch and we beat App, and now everything's back to normal. And it's like, no, the problems are kind of still under the hood. Like, you got away with this one. Again, JJ Cole easily, I think, played the worst game that he's played since he's been the App starter for the last couple games.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, this is an issue. Now, the end of their schedule for the season is very cake. So this may not, they can probably play at 60% of their potential and still win a lot of these games. Like, you play at UL Monroe, November 1st. You play Troy at home. That one might be a little iffy on the 13th. You play Georgia Southern and Georgia State in the season. You do play in Statesboro. However, when we get to the Georgia Southern game, I'll explain. You already know, but I will further explain why that will not be an issue for Old Dominion.
Yeah.
And then you play Georgia State, who we just talked about is I guess the stone worst team in the conference at this stage in the season. So
I want to give you to your point again, just kind of hammering this in because apparently we needed more evidence for this argument. Old Dominion, early in the fourth quarter, they are up 21. Let me give you this series of plays. Granted, this drive started at the app 34 after a unsuccessful 4th and 1. You go Colton Joseph run, Devin Roche run, 0 yards, incomplete. Colton Joseph run, pass complete for 11 yards to Raheem Gladding or Abdul Raheem Gladding. Colton Joseph run, Colton Joseph incomplete, Colton Joseph interception. How many dang times do I have to say Colton Joseph before you hand it? The only time you hand it off to literally anybody else, you get a 0-yard gain. And again, this is one small sample size. They're on the fringes of the red zone, so you have to consider that. Like, this is not your typical drive. But in a situation where they could have gone further to put the game on ice, they got into field goal range, but could have gotten into the end zone, taken up more than, they moved 28 yards in 3 minutes. That is incredibly inefficient, which you need at that point in the game. That's good. It wasn't all bad from that perspective. But this idea of being so reliant on one guy, teams are picking up. App picked it up. And we're going to see other teams. Troy's going to pick it up. I think I see it very differently. You were so on that game. I think Troy right now wins that game. I really do, because I think they have the defensive personnel that is required and the defensive coaching from that standpoint to shut down Colton Joseph. And when you do that, Naeem Abdul Gladding, what's he going to do? He's not a running back. Your running backs can't do crap.
Yeah. I mean, this also gets into the thing of like the fact that the leading receiver each week is basically playing hot potato between like one of 4 different receivers, and you don't know as the leader of the team like who's going to step up that week. I think that's a little concerning. Like, I don't want to use. I guess I'll use your pro team as an example. Like Buffalo Bills. Like, we don't know a lot of times week to week like who it's going to be. Some weeks it's Shakir, some weeks it's Kincaid, but also sometimes in a big spot it's like, who am I going to? Like, I truly don't know.
Curtis Samuel. Yeah, it's like awesome. We're drawing up plays for Curtis Samuel. That's incredible, man.
I also want to illustrate their, I guess, lack of rushing prowess based on again PFF. So the top, and this includes Colton Joseph. This is everybody that had what did I set it at least 5 carries in the Sun Belt this week. Old Dominion's top rush grade for a player was Devin Roche. He was 16th. We did not have 16 teams in the conference. We also had a lot of teams on bye. I mean, I'm looking at it. It's like Georgia State had 2 that were higher than him. Louisiana Monroe had 2 that were higher than him. I mean, it's like, and these aren't the premier programs. It's not like James Madison played this weekend.
Right.
You know, Marshall's been a prolific offense as of late. They didn't play. It's just like, listen, guys, this not being able to run the ball outside of Colton Joseph's scrambles or like designed runs, it's I mean, we see why they did what they did the last couple weeks, because they just don't have anybody to defer to in a big spot. And again, when you're playing whack-a-mole with the receivers, it's impossible to kind of get into a rhythm because you don't know who's going to step up on a weekly basis.
When we look back at when Ricky Ronnie inevitably leaves, whether it's on his own accord or they get fed up with the 6-6, this is probably going to be the season we look back to and say this was probably the best Old Dominion team of his tenure.
Easily. No question.
And you're going to think back, well, you know, what could have been? Where did we go wrong? It's the fact that I really do think that inability to run the ball is going to be like, this could have been, this is it. If you run the ball, maybe you beat James Madison. Maybe. Certainly not when you're allowing 63 points, but that creates a whole different ballgame, right?
I don't know, because James Madison's a little bit of an isolated incident because it's
Mm-hmm.
rushing defense is like, I think, second best in the country yardage per game wise. Now obviously turnovers killed you against Marshall because those turned into points for Marshall. But kind of the same thing there. It's like, we talked about last week when ULM goes down, they fly into a panic, like they don't know what to do with themselves. I don't say that's the same thing for Old Dominion, but I think it's the same thing in that when those long, deep shots aren't hitting, all of a sudden it's kind of like, uh-oh, like what's the offense look like now? And I mean, we've seen the last 2 weeks, like what it looked like. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. App State, this is going to be, I guess, a growing season. You might want to hire a real offensive coordinator because 1 week AJ Swan has it, but he's coming off the bench cold and he throws 2 touchdowns. 1 week JJ Cole looks like a fringe top 5 quarterback in the conference. And the only thing I can think of is just that they have that offensive inconsistency that Dowell Loggins needed to be the head coach and the offensive coordinator in one package. Maybe he needs some support staff because this has been, you want to talk about Jekyll, you talked about Jekyll and Hyde or Two-Face or whatever last week. This is that in a nutshell. Like, we don't even know who's going to be the best quarterback to come out of the room on a weekly basis. Billy Wiles has had a week where he looked like the best quarterback on the roster, and we know he's not good from his time at Southern Miss. So I think this is going to be a longer build than App fans were initially anticipating. I think they thought coming into the season it was going to be a quick like patch up fix. And it's looking more like, hey, we need to put the car in the shop for a couple weeks and figure it out. So this might take like another off season or two before we kind of even see what the finished product is supposed to look like.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I wonder what they will do if they'll force Loggins or if he'll make that decision to step away, because from an offensive perspective, there is a lot of talent. You have 2 quarterbacks who, again, inconsistent in how they appear, but you have 2 guys that are bona fide starting quarterbacks at their best. Rashad Dominion's been very, very good this year. You've got guys in the receiving route. I mean, Dalton Stroman was really, really good last year. I don't know if he's been missing time or what's going on there, but this is a talented offense. I think that hinges a lot, or their future hinges a lot on how much control Loggins is willing to give up, because, as you said, no offensive coordinator. They've got a DC, they got a special teams coordinator, but it's just position coaches. They don't have like a pass game guy. They don't have a run game guy. It is Dowell Loggins. End of conversation. And that is proven for a long time at really every level. Maybe high school, it's not the case, but really every level. That just doesn't work.
No,
it doesn't.
And there are guys that have been, some of the best offensive minds in like college football. And even that, like Lane Kiffin has an offensive coordinator. Josh Heupel has an offensive coordinator. Like, you go through and look at all these guys, like, and you're like, okay, like, I understand, like, you can be an offensive head coach and even call plays and still have an offensive coordinator to kind of bounce ideas off of, or, get insights from. And he just doesn't. Every week that passes and they put up, basically a stinker through 3 quarters, and they score 2 like garbage time touchdowns, basically when they're down 24-7 in the 4th quarter. It looks bad, like, optically. And I know I talked about perception with Georgia State, but it's kind of the same thing with App State, where it's like, maybe you don't think as Dowell Loggins that it's going to make a huge difference, but it's one of those things people can immediately point to and go, okay, well, this is something that needs to change, like, ASAP. So, also, I'm sorry to do this, but I just got a notification that Brian Kelly got fired at LSU.
Oh, Brian Kelly killed a kid.
He did. People forget
that. Don't forget that.
No. And now he's going to take his $50 million buyout or whatever and sit on an island for the rest of his life, I assume. All right. Next game here. Southern Miss blows out UL Monroe. Braylon Braxton absolutely dotted them up. He was 18 of 23, 248, 4 touchdowns. UL Monroe finally put in a new quarterback in Landon Graves. It did not go well, but I still maintain that, like, even if it doesn't go well, you know what you have in Aiden Armenta. So unless literally, I would give anybody who's listed as a quarterback another a shot this season and just try to find something to build off of, because Armenta shouldn't be back next year as even in the running for a starting quarterback job. Like, he's had 1.5 years, 1 3/4 years to figure that out, and it just hasn't happened. Yeah, Graves didn't play well. They only threw the ball 24 times. Completed half of his attempts, 103, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Landon Graves did. Braylon Braxton's second highest passing grade via PFF in the conference this week, behind Bishop Davenport. Yeah, I mean, this was just a old-fashioned, they just handed ULM their butts, but it kind of is what it is at this point.
I mean, the Warhawks stuck around. This was 21-14 at halftime. They were there, but as you've said continually, and it's very true, once it hits the fan, it hits the fan. Because as soon as Southern Miss goes up, interceptions on back-to-back drives, you spend 4 minutes, 8 plays, and you punt. You go 3 and out to punt. Man, it's really fun. Nuts. I like watching I love watching 2.5 minute drives that are 3 and outs.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so fun, man. Keep it up. Something I thought about over the weekend was, do you remember on the old podcast, this was the first time it was, all right, kid, welcome to being a semi-public figure in sports media. We got dunked on for Southern Miss stuff. And
for what?
It was really the quarterback stuff. I mean, this was Will Hall, Frank Gore's running the Superman offense. Those were the first people to really jump on me, kind of like Old Dominion did in the preseason.
Yeah. No, I remember that. And then they were telling you that they were going to beat Georgia State, and then they played Georgia State, and Georgia State beat them like by almost like this score, like 49-20 or something.
So I remember that very vividly. Of course, that's I think every person in media is going to remember the first time they were like actually got real feedback, negative feedback, which is fine. That's part of the gig. I was shocked in the preseason when I was so bearish on Southern Miss that we didn't get any of that kind of feedback as well. Maybe it's just people didn't follow when we switched over to warm weather from the Underdog show or what, but we didn't get that negative feedback or to the same strength, because they have the right to be rubbing this in my face. Charles Huff has done a great job at Southern Miss, and it helps that he has brought a lot of that Marshall team, namely the best player on that team in Braylon Braxton. That helps a lot. Yeah. But there's still 21 other starters that you had to account for. There's still the special teams guys. There's still the depth guys, the backups. And I really do think Charles Huff needs to be in the running for conference coach of the year, if not some type of, some on the watch list. National. Yeah, so some technical stuff there. But the thesis is, Southern Miss fans that were watching us 3 years ago, if you're still around, come back, because you were right, and you can finally rub it in, and I'll take it, because Charles Huff has done an excellent job, and you have to think that he wins conference coach of the year. Yes.
Yeah, I think he has to. Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, Southern. We cut off a little bit for a second, so I don't know where we were, but hats off. Good job, guys. ULM, figure it out.
I think the reason that we didn't get pushback was, number one, I don't know if Matt was on the Southern Miss preview, but I certainly was very kind of bullish on them, just because I was like, look at the West. I know we got kind of the wool, I guess, pulled over our eyes about Louisiana, but it seems like everybody did in like the country. I don't think anybody was like, oh, Louisiana's bad, they're going to win like 4 games this year. I think everybody was like pretty bullish on them. I think the reason we didn't get any pushback was I was just like, I think this is the second best team in the West behind Louisiana, like in theory. And then I was like, I think they can push for the West division just because you take the best quarterback in the conference, resume or whatever wise. Like if you think Colton Joseph has surpassed Braylon Braxton, that's fine. But I still think that Braylon shows up in big games and big spots and is always at a very high quality level, like with his game. And so I was just like, great coach, great quarterback. My questions were with the other pieces. It seems like that has not really been a problem. But I think that's part of the reason was it was just kind of a push and pull. And I don't even think necessarily you were that down on them like in preseason. You were just kind of like middle of the pack. Like
Sure.
you're like
I was
they're
definitely
winning 6 games or something,
but
I think you said.
I mean, I remember drawing the comparison that made a lot of sense was to Troy, which was in a kind of similar situation where it's like, even if you bring, because we were kind of treating Southern Miss in the preseason as Marshall Light. Even when you bring all of that infrastructure over, it's still a new program. There's still so much change. And we saw when Troy transitioned from John Summerall to Gerard Parker, there was a huge drop off. And Troy's starting to put the pieces together now. We'll talk about them later. But that week or, year 0 to year 1 transition was really, really big for them. And I anticipated that kind of, I guess it wouldn't have been a fall off for Southern Miss considering where they started, but I anticipated a much slower upward trajectory for them. And I was wrong. I don't want to say I was wrong.
I think I made this argument in the preseason. I cannot remember. Like this is a million episodes ago at this point, but I was like, the thing that separates them for me from a Troy of last year is Gunnar Watson's not playing quarterback at Troy in 2024. That was the thing for me where I was like, all right, this is the hard cutoff line because it's like Goose Crowder, Kilcrease, what we knew was Caldwell later. Who's going to emerge of that? And then we kind of saw how last season started very poorly and then got better at the end with that quarterback change. I was just like, Southern Miss just airdropped the best quarterback in the conference on their team and it didn't take them anything other than giving Charles Huff a contract. I think some of those guys that have moved on elsewhere, I can't remember if it was Fitzpatrick. I think it was Fitzpatrick transferred to Oklahoma State after he left Marshall, the receiver who was their big guy. I think he regrets that move and would be killed to be in Hattiesburg today because of what a mess that program is with already firing Mike Gundy and everything. I think he would love to be competing for a Sun Belt title with Southern Miss at this point, considering how that season has gone. But this is what I'm saying is just like, I was high on them. I even kind of pushed. I asked Phil Steele that in the preseason. I was like, where are you out on Southern Miss? He's like, oh, I think they could be like the third best team in the West. And I'm like, I'm way higher on them than that. Like, I think they could like be in the title game at the end of the season. Like, they probably won't beat James Madison because JMU's got a much more kind of complete roster, but they can be right there. I mean, again, it's like, to me, Louisiana was their only competition. I wasn't that high on, and Troy has now emerged, but it's like, I wasn't high on Arkansas State. I wasn't high on ULM. I wasn't high on, a lot of these other teams. So to me, even Troy, and I was wrong on Troy, but it's like, who in the West stands out other than, I guess, Troy on this upswing and now Southern Miss? It's like everybody else just feels like they are lucky. They're going to be lucky to make a bowl game. A lot of these teams that are in the West. So I think that's the reason. And I think also they're just extremely happy to be where they are from where they started last year to where they are right now through this year. Like, they're probably like, I don't even care if people like doubted us or whatever. Like, we're just happy to already be bowl eligible. And it's not even the 1st of November yet. So, they're like, we probably haven't been here in a long time. And so And I was like, I don't think you can underestimate the coaching upgrade from Will Hall to Charles Huff either. Like, that is immense.
Sure.
All right, so let's get through that game. Southern Miss blows ULM out of the water. No shock there. So this was my game. Arkansas State beats Georgia Southern by 10, 34-24. I had a bunch of takeaways from this game. All of them negative on Georgia Southern, other than I thought JC French played okay. Everybody else is just everybody not named Camden Brown on the offense are just like whatever to me. Like, even I'm starting to think too that OJ Arnold was better suited for the role that he had last year behind Jalen White. Like, they need an early down like bruiser so that he can have kind of that space to operate out in, which he doesn't seem to have. He's not as good of a runner between the tackles as Jalen White, and that really shows like when you watch games like this. This a real backbreaker. Georgia Southern goes up 21-10 right at kind of the endish of the second quarter, and Arkansas State walks down the field without really much resistance at all and makes it 21-17, and that just felt like that was the real turning point in the game, because it felt like Southern had all this momentum. They were getting some stops, and then Jalen Rayner just takes them down the field. They score before halftime, cut a 11-point lead to 4, and then Arkansas State kind of owned the second half. Let me read to you this sequence. So this was written out tweet-wise by a guy from the Statesboro newspaper named Josh Aubrey. He does great work covering Georgia Southern, but he put it out into words so that I could read it off to you. With 5:51 left in the game, this is Clay Helton clock management, Zeke. 5:51 left in the game, they were on the 13-yard line of Arkansas State, down 10 points. They burned 3 minutes and 51 seconds of game time in like 6 plays or something. They kicked a field goal at the 2-minute warning. They started that whole sequence at the 13-yard line with 5:51 to go, and they kicked a field goal at the 2-minute warning. They did not score a touchdown. He said, I'm pretty sure I got all that right to see, but that is 3:51 spent going 10 yards. You talking about ULM burning all of that. It was them running the ball nonstop with a running game that was not really all that explosive or working all that well. It was, I kind of lost my cool on Saturday and tweeted something along the lines of, is Brandon Bailey mentally deficient? Like, because on one of these series, I think it was the one right before halftime that I'm talking about, Arkansas State had multiple plays where it was Jalen Rayner drops back to pass. Nobody's open. 1, 2, 3, 4. He scrambles up the middle for a 7-yard gain. Nobody even looks at him until he like gets tackled. And I think he ran that touchdown in too. So this was multiple plays where he just did the exact same thing, and Georgia Southern's defense was just like, nah, I don't think I want to stop him today. So this is Clay Helton in a nutshell. I'm not going to relitigate the whole thing because I've said my piece on previous episodes, but there are people now on Twitter who are like, I think I'm good going to games for the rest of the year. Like, I'm going to withhold donations, like not contributing to NIL, all that stuff. They're like, I'm not throwing money into a pit so it can be set on fire by Clay Helton and company. And nobody has heard from the AD to this point. He tweets out something every Saturday that is the most generic post you've ever seen. That's like, ready to gatta, and then they lose by 10 on the road, and he's just like, all right, see you next Saturday, or here's the air rifle shooting team results from Sunday morning or whatever. It's like, okay. So yeah, I mean, Butch Jones beat Butch Jones Jr. basically at Southern is what it is.
No, I mean, yeah, we've been here, right? It's unfortunately to the folks not attending games, or if donors start dropping out, that unfortunately hurts Southern more because if you stop donating to like the school or the athletic department, because where else is that money to buy out Hilton going to come from? Obviously,
Are
the
they
NIL
are they
stuff
ever
is
going to buy it? Are they ever going to buy him out? That's
the
that. I think
thing.
that's that. Here's what you just said is a valid point, but it's a chicken or egg where it's like,
Right.
if I give money, I'm basically endorsing this failure that I'm seeing this season. I'm basically saying, no, keep it up, and here's some more money on top of it.
Right.
I think a lot of people are like, our voices aren't being heard. There was a piece in the AJC last 2 weeks ago about the Southern Miss loss at home, where they asked the university president, they were like, what do you think of kind of like criticism of this football team this year? He goes, it's just some people online. We don't pay any mind to it. So I think a lot of people are like, okay, here's proof that we are just not people that exists online and are just complaining into the void. I think for a lot of people, it's the only way to get the message through, because you've got a bunch of people who are sticking their head in the sand and being like, there are no problems, everything's going great. And then, whatever media availability, but it's like, Southern doesn't play next Saturday. I think they play the subsequent Thursday. So Helton's not even there to give his normal like empty platitudes of like, oh well, blah blah blah, and John 3:16 says you walk through the valley or whatever, and it's like, all right, dude, like has no bearing on winning football games. Like all of this stuff is totally meaningless. And so I don't know. Like I said, I feel like a lot of people have just been fed up with it. I mean, I don't know if Georgia Southern wins another game this year. And then also the guy from the Statesboro Herald who I quoted said that he believes that Josh Dallas, Latrell Bullard, and Chance Gamble are all going to transfer out after the year for NIL reasons. So there goes, I guess, two of your best skill position players. I don't really care about Bullard that much. He was one of those that was always more sizzle than steak to me. Like he's a part of that worst rush defense in the country. Which, we talked about Arkansas State's issues running the football. Kenyon Clay had 17 carries for 124 yards and a score. So I mean, I would miss Josh Dallas and I'd miss Chance Gamble, but nothing's going to change until we get to the root cause. It's like trying to treat the side effects of like a serious disease and not actually addressing the disease itself. So
I mean, there's only one chemotherapy for this program right now, and it is. I think, I don't know if it was you or someone else tweeted. I mean, it really is the triumvirate of OCDC head coach, all three. There's no, maybe there's a position coach in there, but like that but none of those three. No. This isn't a fire Helton and promote Bailey.
No,
God forbid that put the team in a worse place.
Yeah, I mean Ryan Applin as the OC has been markedly better than Bailey, and even I'm like fed up with him based on a lot of the decisions that get made. I mean, I just read it off. They spent 3 minutes running the football in the red zone down 2 scores and then settled for a field goal and then tried an onside kick and didn't get it, and basically the game was over. I mean, they Arkansas State, I had already flipped the game off by that point because I was like, I'll just watch something else. But Arkansas State, the field goal they kicked was like, the game was over. Like, I don't know if Vegas put a call in, but like they kicked a field goal up 7 when they had control and everything. So I don't really like, this game was a 10-point game, but in reality, it was just like Arkansas State was doing the thing that you see in like cartoons where the big brother puts his hand on the little brother's head and he can't swing to get him and he's just swinging at air. Like that was basically what it was in the second half. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, you can't solve a problem without getting to the root cause. So if you refuse to address what the actual problem is, then this is why I'm just kind of like, I'm over it. Like, whatever.
Yeah, stuck here.
Yep. All right, last game of the night. Troy beats Louisiana 35-23. This was an interesting one because by a lot of measures, Tucker Kilcrease probably had his worst game that he's had like in weeks. PFF has him graded as the second worst passing quarterback in the conference this week, just ahead of JJ Cole, who we talked about. Also, I didn't realize this. I should have called this out at the time. JJ Cole this week, his yards per attempt was 3.7 yards. His A dot was 6. It was like almost set. It was like 6.5.
That makes Carlos Del Rio Wilson blush.
That's check down Charlie. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so Kilcrease was pushing the ball down the field, but he wasn't having a ton of success doing it. He finished 16 of 24, 180 yards and a pick. However, Louisiana just doesn't have – they don't have the pieces. Their offensive line is not good enough to compete. Lunch is a better runner than he is a thrower, which puts a ceiling on what they're able to do. The receiving core, it's a little bit like Old Dominion this year, but I pointed this out last year to Matt, and he agreed. But they're having the same problem now, which is let's bring everybody together and have everybody contribute. Sounds great when the quarterback is really good, like a Ben Woldridge. When it's a Lunch Winfield and the guy's completing 12 passes in a 60-minute football game, which is one pass every 5 minutes of game time, seems a little messed up. And you can't really run the ball outside of the carries that Lunch gets. So what are you left to do at that point? You're going to be on defense a lot.
Yeah, the offensive line has really put a hard ceiling on what this offense as a whole can do. And, that's obviously the case. But I think that's really evident when you look at Zylan Perry and Bill Davis. Two guys that were really, really good in previous years, were great. I would go as far as say Zylan Perry last year was averaging 6 yards a carry, 695 yards. He is averaging 6 yards a carry this year, but it certainly has been a little empty. And then Davis ran for almost 800 yards this year. He's at 500 for the season. So you've got those guys who were really, really good last year. And then obviously from a passing perspective, that just makes everything so much harder. Now, is the offensive line the reason I think Lunch Winfield is completing just over 50% of his passes? Probably not. I think, he may be in that mold where you accept the 50%, 55% for, 220 yards, but that he's going to make it up with his 110, 120 on the ground. And so, that's just the quarterback that he is. With that real ceiling, where do you move from here? Because I think UL is in an interesting position that, maybe Marshall might be in. There are a couple teams in the conference that are in this, you need to be in a holding pattern so you can keep these guys around. Lunch Winfield being one of them, right? You pretty confident Walker Howard, he hasn't gotten the job back yet, so they're going to ride him. Bill Davis and Zylan Perry both have eligibility left. There are guys on the defense with a lot of eligibility left. You're in a holding pattern, but at 2-6, it's like you have to turn this corner or else you get purged. You get purged almost in the way that Marshall did, James Madison, when Signetti left for Indiana. You get that type of purge if you don't turn a corner soon, because if I'm Lunch, because he's not Jalen Rayner for whatever reason, who has decided to stick with Arkansas State, Lunch is going to look around and say, I can go do this at a low tier P4. Shoot, Georgia Tech's going to need a guy that can run the ball like heck.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who's to say they don't call? Same thing with Colton Joseph. Hey Colton, we're going to need a guy. We need to replace the guy that you play exactly like. There are very few quarterbacks in the country that play like you. Hey Colton Joseph, you really want to stick with Ricky, Ronnie?
Think about the P4 openings that are already come open. Maybe not LSU. That's a pretty high bar, which just opened up. But you look at the Virginia Techs and the Oklahoma States of the world and all these teams, and And you're like, even look at Deion Sanders at Colorado. It seems like that's not going to last too much longer, either due to health reasons or performance. So it's like a lot of these teams are going to need quarterbacks next year. And like you said, you start looking around and going, all right, well, if Virginia Tech makes a solid hire and their head coach comes and offers me a starting spot as a quarterback, or even to compete, as the QB 1B, 1A for that job, am I sticking around at Louisiana to figure out to see like what this becomes? Okay, so I want to illustrate the problem here with the offensive line. As far as PFF has it graded, Louisiana is the third worst pass blocking grade in the conference this season, only ahead of App and Georgia State. As a run blocking team, they are 8th grade wise. Receiving grade wise, they are dead last, which illustrates the problem that I put up with the receivers earlier. Is like the guys that were really good for you last year, the Terrence Carters and those types of guys, Broussard, whoever, all those guys have kind of either transferred out or just filtered out over time. And now it's like when that quarterback that they have isn't a Zion Chris, it's not a Ben Wooldridge, it's not, whoever they've had over the years. It's almost like, the rising tide lifts all ships. This is the opposite of that. When you drain the water, the boat has nowhere to go because there's no water. So it's just like, yeah, you have a awful offensive line. You have bad receiving weapons. You can't run blocks. So Zylan Perry and Bill Davis are totally, out on their own on an island trying to get yardage. I don't know if anywhere tracks like yards before contact and all of that sort of stuff. I would be shocked if they weren't really bad at that as well. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they were in the negatives for both of those guys, because those guys are probably getting hit before they even make it back to the line of scrimmage. Yeah, I mean, good win for Troy. They
we
get away
didn't
with
talk a lot
one.
about a good Troy team. Yeah, they did a good win.
Well, it's weird because it's like when you look at the box score later, you're like, actually, Troy handled them in this game, but actually nobody really played all that spectacularly. Like, everybody was fine, and Louisiana got their stats, but it just was like they just kind of overwhelmed Louisiana. I mean, Jordan Lovett played well. 21 carries, 113 and 2 scores. Gilcrease had two rushing touchdowns, but he only had 25 yards rushing, and he had a long rush of 15 yards. So, and I know they count sack yardage, but still, he wasn't that great with his arm. Nobody really stood out. Their leading receiver had 68 yards. They just kind of overwhelmed Louisiana over time. And, Lunch threw 2 picks. Walker Howard came in and threw a pick on his only attempt of the game. So he's firmly saying, I do not want this job. Do not give it back to me.
He did the same thing last week.
I'm fine. I mean, it feels like the coach is like, hey man, we paid you all this NIL money. Like, get out there and throw. And he's like, I'm good. I don't want it. Leave me on the bench, please.
Yeah, draw attention real quick to Jordan Lovett. We talked about him. A guy from Statesboro, actually. He ran 61 for 274, almost doubled his season total with 113, 2 touchdowns, brings him to 3 on his career. More yards last week than he did in the first 2 yards of his career. So hope maybe a breakout game for him for a Troy offense that, with Tucker Gilcrease, kind of surged in recent weeks and was carrying the boats, but like, it's been Tay Meadows really, and he's been good, not great. Maybe this surges and gives them another offensive identity as we barrel towards what may ultimately be the conference semifinal against Southern Miss.
Yeah. Troy also had 4 sacks, led by Donnie Smith, who had 1.5. So, yeah, I mean, Louisiana, I think it's really tough for Louisiana to have an offensive head coach and presumably, I don't know who their offensive coordinator is, presumably have an offensive coordinator and be this bad on offense, especially in the trenches. So it's going to be one of those things that's like borderline impossible to overcome. And like, you're just going to have to, if Desormeaux comes back next year, which I assume he will, even with Billy Napier out there, they're just going to have to rebuild through the trenches and start over again, because this current configuration of the offensive line is just not it. And it's not conducive to winning football games either.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that will do it for all of the week 9 games. Zeke, let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, man. Real easy. I'm on Twitter at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo.
You can email the show, warmweatherfans@gmail.com. You can find us on all of the major social media platforms, Twitter, YouTube, stuff like that. Warm Weather Fans, at Warm Weather Fans, or however you want to go about searching that. You can find me on socials at Watch the Stone. We will be back on Thursday to run down all of the week 10 games upcoming. This has been another edition of Warm Weather Fans.